ninth-round pick out of the Citadel in 1981, Stump carved out a successful NFL career with the Cardinals.
He's strong. He can move. He was agile. He can make guys miss. I mean, he had it all. He had everything in his game.
In Cardinals franchise history, only Larry Fitzgerald has more all-purpose yards.
He did it all, man.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome our viewers and listeners to the Stump Talk podcast, the RBU Running Back University, Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. We got Stump, we got Saphyr, we got our producer, Russ, we got Ro. Hello, everyone. Hello, Saphyr, Coach Stump. How you guys doing?
Hello, Ro. I'm doing well.
Yes, blessed and highly favored. How are you, Coach?
I'm good. Thank you, Saphyr.
Okay.
Good to see you.
You know, I want to tell you, we probably have the most handsome and beautiful, and we are some good-looking people. We was going to touch on that. Stump, you're a handsome guy. That beard is shining. Saphyr, you are beautiful. You got the nice smile. You're eloquent. You got, and our guy Russ. So I think it's important to note that we're in the bye week for the Browns, and we have a lot of introspective information in terms of figuring out where we're going from here with Shador and Dylan and all the stuff we got going on. So I just want to start off and talk about, Coach, the elephant in the room. You know, it's not probably going to let you go first and get Stump's NFL background experience. Stefanski names Tommy Rees as the offensive play caller. Saphyr, what do you think it is? Where we're at with that?
You know, this reminds me of that, I think it was Godfather Part 2, where he's in the kitchen with his button man and his sister, talking about just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. This is the perfect segue. You know, Coach Stump, all of last season, it was, the Reformation. Kevin Stefanski was going to take over play calling. He's going to do it his way. He drafted his guy in the draft, all of that. And now we learned during the off week that he's handed over the play calling to Tommy Rees. How much do you think this is all about fresh ideas or Stefanski protecting himself from owning the machine that he's created? What are your thoughts on this change?
My thought is that it's about a guy that doesn't have a plan, to be perfectly honest. This is the same picture that he painted last year. You know, when Deshaun got hurt, he turned play calling over to Ken Dorsey. Now they're not winning any ball games, and now I can hand it over to Tommy Rees. There's no need to close the door once you let the dog out. And keep the gate. You might as well just keep the gate open. You know, the dog is gone. The season is over. Joe Batonio has played. All those veteran guys have played. They've wasted another year because you didn't know what you was going to do. They had no plan going into the season, to be perfectly honest. They knew Joe Flacco was going to be the starting quarterback, but yet they try to portray, oh, we're giving these guys opportunities. All they did was take the opportunity for Joe to develop a connection with those receivers, which they needed.
Coach, I want to ask you, and I want to ask you, Saphyr, do you think that ownership got involved with Tommy Rees taking over play calling duties? Or do you think that Stefanski kind of put himself in a space where he wants to, I don't want to say a scapegoat or find somebody else to blame? Because we talked about in our past shows, we're big on accountability, right? In our personal lives and in our business. So Saphyr, I want you to go first. Who made this call to make this happen?
I was thinking similar, and I was going to ask Coach Stump this because could this be the Browns organization planting the seeds for a coaching change, Coach Stump?
I tell you, I don't know what the Browns are doing. It doesn't matter who called the plays. Offensively, usually there's a collaborative effort. Now, one person may see something a little different and may have a different flavor, but in terms of putting the game plan together, they're going to put the game plan together. You're going to take a look at what your opponents are doing, and you're going to try to attack those things. But the offensive system, for the most part, was garbage. I mean, Joe Flacco is a guy that throws the ball downfield. They knew they needed the opportunity to win, stretch the field with but you see a lot of short passes, regardless of who was the quarterback, even with Deshaun being the quarterback. Deshaun led the league in passing when he was with the Houston Texans. Okay. But he came to Cleveland and couldn't do anything. And if you take a guy out of college and you're not sure if he can do this or that, when you get a guy that have proven in the NFL that he can do it, well, I wouldn't I wouldn't agree with what Mr. Haslam said when they took a chance and they missed. No, they turned the guy into who he is and didn't improve on who he was.
You know,
Sapphire, I want to ask you. You're very, you're well thought out on the Browns, and from what you're seeing, Sapphire, do you think moving forward, if Tommy Rees has some success, or if he doesn't have success, what do you anticipate moving forward? Because if he has some success, what are the Browns? How do they look at that?
yeah, well, I think that's a very great question because I think the first question is how does the organization define success? I agree with Coach Stump. Hands down, this season is over. It's actually been over. So either way, whether however you define success and whatever Mr. Reeves does or does not, what does it ultimately say about Kevin Stefanski's play calling? And as for me as a fan, his ability to lead a team of men, professionals.
Listen, when you involved with a team sport, it's not about I.
Mhm.
It's about what we can do. All the people Kevin has had his success with players that he allowed to get away. Okay. Case Keenum. I don't need to repeat those guys all the time. Dearness Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay. uh, Donovan People Jones, but he also had Alex Van Pelt, Bill Callahan. When he think his supporting cast wasn't good enough and he can do it himself, he see what he's gotten. Absolutely nothing but failure and heartbreak for the fans there in Cleveland. It's not about a one man thing. He's not playing tennis. And if he was, he's not playing partners. He would be by himself. Then he can say he did it all. He didn't do it all. He had a hell of a supporting cast. But now when he get different supporting casts, he start blaming them for the lack of success that they've had. I mean, it's just Deshaun or Joe Flacco. It doesn't matter. Okay, Joe was successful right there. He came back and he wasn't, but he goes to the Bengals and spend very little time, but he's created a whole hell of a lot of things. He's only one and they're only 1-3 with him, but he
Mhm.
doesn't have a whole heck of a lot to do with that. With Joe, they averaging 32.7 or 32.5 points a game. Okay, with the type of defense that they had, if they was averaging that amount of points with the type of defense that the Browns have, they would be undefeated with Joe Flacco.
Before we expound on Joe Flacco and the success of Baker Mayfield, Sapphire, I'm gonna go back to you again. Uh, were you disappointed in the lack of free agency pickups or the trade deadline, I should say? I'm staying corrected. Did you expect the Browns to make a splash for the receiver with the Jets or anything in that nature?
I mean, for me as a fan, I expected the Browns to separate from Kevin Stefanski during the bye week. For me as a fan, the season is a wash. So why should I invest any more of my hard earned dollars into tickets or merchandise, bringing people in from out of town to go to games, travel with the team? Why should I do that? Right. So
Mhm.
I'm stuck on that. And I'll say this very quickly. I wouldn't want Kevin Stefanski to have his fingerprint on anything the Browns do in the future.
Well, he's not alone. I mean, Andrew Berry doesn't understand when he's got a winner. Some of those guys that I told you about, that some of the moves that he's made definitely didn't help the organization. You get rid of Donovan People Jones for Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
and you have to give up sides, and the guy that returned punts for touchdowns and help you win a game at the last
Mhm.
minute as a rookie in Cincinnati, a guy that did nothing, arrow pointed up, his a six rounder. The sky was the limit for what Donovan People Jones would do if you
Mhm.
only knew how to cultivate his talents. I mean, it's they had a championship team there, in my opinion, uh, but they didn't know how to handle the situation.
You
Didn't know
know,
how to handle, didn't know how to handle players.
Coach Stump, you talked about numerous times, and even sometimes I didn't question it on the podcast, but I used to think about like, man, Coach Stump is a little I don't know, but most of the things you talked about came into fruition in terms of player evaluations, in terms of the turnover from the coaching positions, and we talked about the Scott Peters of the world, the Ashton Grants of the world, people going other places and flourishing. Can you expound and talk about, you were a big Baker Mayfield guy. I criticized him because I don't want my quarterback playing video games, right? But you spoke up for Baker Mayfield. You spoke up for Joe Flacco, and it looks like you were right, Coach. And so, can you talk about the success of Baker Mayfield and Flacco has been playing very well, even though he hasn't gotten the wins in Cincinnati based on that defense.
Listen, when Mr. Haslam fired Freddie Kitchens, he had a interview, he and Jr. with every JW with every coach that was on the staff. And my interview with him lasted a little bit longer because I said, hell, you have talent here. There's no question in my mind. You have talent here. I said, I would love to have the opportunity to coach, to be the head coach of this team. He said, well, if you are not the head coach, would you consider coming back as a running back coach? I said, of course I would. He say, do you think we can win with Baker Mayfield? I said, absolutely, we can win with Baker Mayfield. And Stefanski came in. We won the first year, went to the playoffs, and now all of a sudden he want to change who's in the quarterback room. Baker Mayfield and T.C. McCarthy had a great working relationship. All right, and it worked. The next 2 years, he restructured the staff. He moved TC from coaching the quarterbacks to now coaching tight ends, and he put Drew Petzing in at quarterbacks, and it was a different relationship with Drew and Baker Mayfield. All right. Now it was great for David and Joko because with TC, he became something that he had not become before, and that was a Pro Bowl tight end.
Mhm.
But he changed some things that he didn't need to change, and the only thing that's been happening now is that the Browns have been going in and getting worse and worse with Kevin and Andrew working together.
Sapphire, I want to ask you again. You know the Browns. We have established that in the last 9 weeks of this podcast. How did you feel about Baker Mayfield and when he was actually here? And to be honest,
I mean, for me, it seemed like he played hurt all the time. And it seemed like there was instability in terms of the play calling. Like what I'm seeing right now, the players don't seem to be put in positions where their strengths can really be embellished. And that takes me back to the play calling. I've never played sports, but it's simple math, right? Coach Stump talks about the high caliber talent that was in the city wearing that uniform. And for some reason, and I'm talking about on the field and off the field in terms of the coaches, for some reason, he tinkered with it. And that right there, that thing right there is probably the most disturbing. I was a big Alex Van Pelt fan because first of all, he knows the AFC North. He's from Pittsburgh, for Pete's sakes. And that I can recall, he reminded me of Bruce Arians, right? Just the way that he had our quarterbacks playing, right? So why mess with that? Why mess with the running backs coach, right? When I think about that era, that snippet in time, I think, why would you not listen to your coaches and work with the players that they've said they work with every single day, right? And they know are ready. That's the part that's disturbing about Stefanski. He's like self sabotaging.
Well, this is the thing. You said something important. Uh, you thought Baker was playing with a whole lot of injuries.
Mhm.
He was playing with a whole lot of injuries. Okay, and that should not have been the case because we were paying Case Keenum over $6 million to be a backup. He was probably the highest paid backup. Okay, Stefanski knew Case. He won some playoff games with him when he was in Minnesota. So you bring this guy with you because you know he knows your system. And the thing about Case is that all the players looked up to him, and he would get on their behind if they weren't doing the right thing. Baker shouldn't have been playing. Baker should have been allowed to
Yep.
relax. We just win a few games, and Baker come back healthy, and now you repeat going to the playoffs for 2 years in a row. So it was totally mismanaged there. Baker has proven that he's a player. Was he young? Yes. Did he rub some people the wrong way? Yes. But the players had all the respect in the world for Baker.
And
Did
that's
he
what matters.
have something going on? Yes, they did. But we should have intervened in that relationship from a management standpoint.
Well, Coach Stump, you sent some stats earlier on your guy Flacco, and again, I had to hear about you talk about Flacco for a whole year last year. It got annoying at some point, but come to find out, you were right yet again. He's averaging 313 yards a game, 2.7 touchdowns, 32 points a game, right? And Russ had mentioned earlier that the running back uh, for the Bengals had come on record and criticized his defense. I've been adamant in saying I'm rooting for Joe Flacco, regardless of being a Browns guy and Browns fan. What do you anticipate moving forward? Again, Coach, the defensive coordinator for the Browns. Let's just say they win a couple of games. Tommy Reese calls a good enough, adequate offense. Where do you think the Browns stand in the next 2 or 3 games if they have some success in terms of uh, the GM and the head coach for the Browns moving forward? Sapphire, you can answer first, please.
I'm so jaded. I wouldn't be shocked if they went to New York and lost that game. Like it's like the ship is just floating out there in the middle of the ocean, no captain, no oars. Like it just seems like there's so much chaos and dissension, and there's such a disconnect between the head coach, and these players.
And they trade Sauce Gardner to the Colts. That's the best thing that has happened for the Browns, having to face the Jets. It's no question in my mind. The defense, Coach Schwartz, is going to have those guys fired up and ready to play. So it's just a matter now if they can muster any kind of points offensively. It's still the offensive line, but that offensive line just won by them
Yep.
getting rid of Quentin Williams because he's a tough tackle to deal with.
I hope it's so, Coach Stump.
I have a thought and a question, Coach Stump and Sapphire. I'd like to get your thoughts coming into the trade deadline. Um, Again, me and Russ always talk football throughout the week and throughout
Mhm.
the day, and he stays on top of things. I'm just curious: was there a move out there that the Browns could have, should have made that maybe could turn the tide? Or Sapphire, you mentioned you think the season is a foregone conclusion, but
I know.
they really didn't make a splash. I see they sent a defensive player somewhere. I was telling Russ earlier, I didn't. He's never hit my radar. What are your thoughts on that, Sapphire?
I mean, what was their motivation? They're already stacked for next year's draft with the first round picks they have, right? Um, I don't think that there was anything the Browns could do at this point because Coach Stump has been very consistent and clear what they should have done in this year's draft that they didn't. Draft for the positions they knew they had the need at. That did not happen. So for me, there's nothing that the Browns maybe were even motivated to do, let alone could do for the rest of the season.
Well, if they were smart, they would have taken a page out of the Jets book. To be perfectly honest, Miles had a hell of a game. Okay, he just had 5 sacks. His stock isn't going to be any higher. The owners talk about some things that Miles could do to be better. He wouldn't even talk to him about uh, just business. He referred him back to Andrew Berry. Okay, so Miles Stump would never be as high. Miles forced their hand. Andrew Berry didn't have to sign Miles because Miles didn't do anything, but they made Miles the highest paid uh, non-quarterback position at that time when they paid him. They could have simply franchise tagged. Miles had no leverage. He used something that he didn't have because he was dealing with Andrew Berry. There was no way in heck I would have given Miles that opportunity. But now, what I would do, I would definitely try to see if I can get a couple first round draft picks for him, just like the Jets did, because you need offensive linemen, uh, you need receivers. Miles is one guy. He can get 10 sacks and they still weren't going to win that game.
Hmm.
If I can get enough players for him, I would trade him.
You know,
Saphyr?
if I could just add real quick to that, I completely agree with what Coach Stump said. But that takes me back to the insanity that's going on down that street right now and the chaos and just the lack of clear acumen with how things work in the NFL. That makes perfect sense, coach. But that's the problem. They're not using the common sense the good Lord gave them down there in Berea. So I will also say this as a season ticket holder, I got an email from the Browns before Miles Garrett signed, and it was all about season tickets and all of that. And I just responded very nicely in a Christian way. I'm just going to wait to see what you folks do with Miles Garrett because at that point I know a ton of other Browns fans. If Miles had not been re-signed, if he had left this city, you would see more orange seats in that stadium than you ever have before. And I think the Browns recognize that, which is, I think, the reason why Andrew Berry made him the highest, non QB paid player at that time. There's a
But
lot of
he didn't
politics and dynamics in that.
he didn't have to do that because Miles couldn't do nothing.
Hmm.
Miles couldn't do absolutely nothing. He had no leverage other than knowing who he was playing against. That's the only leverage he had, and he knew how they were going to react. He got paid. He's still unhappy, but he got paid. But
Yes,
that the Browns simply could have said, recognize that he had no power whatsoever.
agree with you totally. And it just in my mind, trying to understand why they would do that. And Miles looks miserable as well, coach.
Sapphire, I'm sorry, I have to interject. No, it's not a man on earth for $40 million that's miserable. That's not. He, I mean,
He looks miserable to me, gentlemen. I'm just saying, his body language on the sidelines. And yes, he gets behind the mic in the post game pressers and says all of the, usual things, but his body language, I go deeper. When I watch these games, yes, these men are millionaires and they do all that. But I still believe players like Miles Garrett, there must be some part of them in there deep inside that want to win or feel like they're part of an organization that has winning as a priority.
It's no question he's miserable because when you have guys like Joe Flacco, when they saw what he did 2 years prior, I mean, Miles elevated. I mean, Joe elevated everybody: players, coaches, fans, owners, you name it. He elevated us all. And for you to not bring him back, he said he was totally surprised that the Browns didn't offer him a contract.
Yep.
Why did you offer him a contract, even though Deshaun is coming back? First of all, because you don't recognize his personality. All of those guys can get along together. They were assuming, oh, the room wouldn't be right with Deshaun and Joe and all that. That's not the type of person those guys are. They don't know their personality. That's why that's why Amari Cooper had a bad season when he came back. They didn't recognize his personality. Okay. You have to know people. Don't just be around them and don't get to know them.
Mhm.
All right. Or you wasting their time and you wasting your own time. And they put all the fans at bay. I mean, they simply put all the fans at bay because they could have enjoyed a lot of success.
Yep.
Had a hell of a coaching staff for the most part. All the players, for the most part, uh, had great working relationships with their coaches, and everybody was striving to do the same thing: go back to the playoffs, go back to the playoffs. And they upset the apple cart by getting rid of coaches and also doing stupid stuff with the draft or with trading players.
Well, Coach, you talked about their lack of, and you talk to me about this all the time, having people skills, and between Andrew Barry and Coach Stefanski, both lacking the ability to wear that hat to have personnel skills, and in Sapphire, you talked about this, the art of human relations, right?
Yeah.
Which goes into music and family and spirituality. There's different elements that come to that, and relating to people. Uh, we're all in a climate. We understand how important that is, Coach. I do want to move forward and talk about some NFL games that hit maybe some the national radar. Sapphire and Stump, the Commanders. The quarterback Daniels got injured. They were getting blown out, and he broke his arm. That's a big story right now. Rodgers and Pittsburgh defeated the Colts. The Colts have been playing very well. The Vikings defeated the Lions, and the Bills defeated the Chiefs. Sapphire, anything about those four games that kind of resonated with you?
You know what? Yeah, the Commanders game, I watched that. It was terrible. But it also made me recall what Coach Stump talked about. When you start like your off season, you don't have all your players in during the off season, and all of those OTAs and coming in the training camp, your rhythm's not there, but they're at a higher probability of being injured. And then if you think about McLaren coming in late, right? They finally got his contract squared away, but it was late in like the preseason. So the timing, right, was off. It just seemed like it was a domino effect. And I think that Daniels was playing injured even in that game, right? So you got injuries going on. You have your star players doing maybe more different than what they should have done because of the off the field business of football. It just really made me remember what Coach Stump talked about, in terms of making sure your team is ready for the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
Coach
if you're
Stump?
going to sign those guys, you definitely want to get them in ahead of time, especially with this just being Jaden's second year, and that didn't happen. But what I'm more surprised about with the Commanders is that their defense just have not been there this year, and that's a real big surprise to me because those defensive coaches, they're hell of a guys and they know what they're doing, but it's just not happening for them right now.
Coach Stump, I want to ask you. You touched on Quinnen uh, Williams, the resident indicated, and then Sauce Gardner getting a couple of 26 first rounders and a 27 first rounder, I believe. Aaron Glenn is struggling there, Coach. What do you think about those two moves he's made? I mean, we want him to keep his job, obviously. I'm rooting for the guy, but I think they have one win this year. What are your thoughts on that, Coach Stump?
Well, Aaron Glenn, as you well know, was drafted in the first round by the Jets, so he's one of their own, and he lost two valuable defensive coach. He lost two valuable pieces to the puzzle. Now, I
Mhm.
don't know about these young men coming out the draft this year, but anytime you can go 2 for 1, it's not you don't you think that's a pretty good deal. They got valuable draft picks, which it's obvious that they need offensive linemen as well. So you won't be able to tell until next year or two, really. But they thinking with the picks that they're getting, they may have about 4 draft picks, or they can get some capital. They now have capital to go out and get a big time player if they think that's what they need.
Sapphire, Russ has mentioned the quarterback. They paid the kid 40 million for 2 years. Uh, Coach, I'm a little old fashioned. You got to earn your money. Sapphire, what do you think about Justin Fields getting the paycheck and them struggling, and Aaron, Aaron Glenn, the head coach, we want him to keep his job. How long do they give him in New York?
Well, first with Justin Fields, I mean, clearly he's been in a new system just about every year he's been in the league. I maybe Coach Stump can speak to that in terms of what he's earning, what the expectations are. But my thinking goes more to Mr. Glenn. I agree with every single thing that Coach Stump just said. And he's in probably the largest NFL market in the country, New York. So you got
Great
different
point.
levels of expectation, right? So
Great point.
I'm worried. I'm just worried because that ownership clan up there is another challenge. If you look
Coach,
at the history of them.
Coach Stump, before you answer, you've been in New York. What is that market like compared to the
Oh,
Seattles and the Arizonas of the world?
I mean, you know, New York, it's the biggest market you could possibly be in. You know, and before we say anything negative about Justin Fields, they had Aaron Rodgers last year, and they didn't win the last 2 years. The first year he got hurt, but last year he wasn't hurt. He was coming back from an injury, but they still got games left to play. He could possibly. I'm hoping he can surpass uh, Rodgers win total last year. You know, they've lost two valuable pieces to their team that was crucial to that defense. So now they really need to score some points. But they have the Browns coming in there limping, and they're hoping that they can win that game.
Hey,
It would have been a much better, I think, a much better chance of winning had they kept those two players. But you know, somebody's backing them up. So now we'll get a chance to see how good their backups are.
and
Uh,
coach, to that point, real quick. So, how different if the Browns are coming in scheming for those players that are no longer there, and you know they're gone? How does that change the way the Browns approach this game?
They may have a little more confidence. I can guarantee you those offensive linemen that was going to be facing Quentin is definitely feeling a little sigh of relief, not total relief, but they think they can take a deeper breath now and exhale a little bit because he's a load. There's no question about that. He's a load.
I want to make an announcement. T County Browns backers, number three in the world right now, and the Browns backers following. They have Tom Darden, who is Tom Darden, I believe, is the leading interceptions leader in the history of the Browns. He's a Michigan guy, which we don't like Michigan guys, but we're going to give him a pass and show him some love. He's from Sandusky.
Oh,
He'll
nice
be at
Blue Streak
Shenanigans
country.
at 12 o'clock this week. They've been giving some great raffles, Coach. They had a Shadur signed helmet. I don't know how they got that, but it's another conversation. But come down to Shenanigans in Dover, Ohio, 12 o'clock. Some great raffles and giveaways. And I want to transition to our guy, um, Grady Kinsey. He was runner up for Mr. Football last year. He was on the top five list. Coach Stump, this guy has roughly, I think, about 7,000 yards, 110 touchdowns. He's going to the Air Force to play football next year. He did this interview while he was on campus. Coach, he kind of reminded me of you a little bit, you know, with the he was just so disciplined to be, you know, Coach Stump, I tell people you're a robot because you just you don't deviate a whole lot, and it's pretty funny. But this kid was very well spoken. So this is Grady Kinsey uh, uh, from the area. He's a great running back. My guy Grady Kinsey from Indian Valley High School. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Could you tell everybody where you at right now?
Right now, I'm in Colorado Springs. It's the day before the Air Force Army game, so I went watched their walk through, and then I'm at the game tomorrow on the sidelines.
Very good. So I have my Indian Valley beanie on. I've never
Okay.
wore a beanie on the show, but I want to say hello to my guy Scott Nelson, Fedora Football local team shop. He does gear for you guys. I also want to say hello to your head coach Matt Lancaster,
Yes,
great
sir.
guy. Very good. Can you give us some insight of what does your family mean to you?
Really, my family, it means everything as far as like obviously my upbringing, and then along with me trying to do the same thing for others. Like I have two little brothers at home and one older, and I think just using the values that my family, my parents have taught me with my own dealings with people, rather, even if that's not even necessarily my brothers or people that are blood family to me, taking those principles and applying it to people in my football family or my school family, church family. I think that has been really helpful for me. Like you're playing in the backyard. So I think that plays a lot into it. Like I said, the conditioning, and then just, loving your brother enough to go sell out for him. And, you know, Coach Lank likes to say, loan your body to Indian Valley football for tonight. Like just sell out your body, sell out your mind, and everything for Indian Valley football.
When we play this live on Tuesday for Coach Stump, and people across the country will see this, we're definitely going to be pushing for that Mr. Football, and obviously, you guys got a playoff game. Looks like next week. Do you guys know who you play yet?
So we're either going to play Circleville or Philo.
Okay.
And we've watched film on both of them, both solid, good teams. So we're going to have to come to play, and it's exciting as any playoff run is.
And push not only for that back to back state title. And hello again to Coach Matt Lancaster, great guy. I'm gonna give you the floor if you can talk to obviously you're at Air Force right now and around the college coaches you'll be working with for the next 4 years or whatnot. But if you could talk to an NFL coach about football, the position, or just being a football player and and dealing with life, what would you ask them?
If I had to, man, I'd probably just ask about the differing levels of intensity from good players to great players. I think that's something that's really just sparked my interest. Like I said, I like watching all the documentaries and the 30 for 30s and stuff like that on TV. And I just like seeing the mindset along with the physical attributes that separate the guys that are the greats, like Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders, Tom Brady, guys like that, to guys that might have had the same talent, but just didn't execute it the same way. I think seeing that from a coach's point of view would be very interesting.
Coach Stump, I think he was indicating that he wants to become a regular player to a great player. He talked about family and talked about sacrificing for his teammates. For this kid to be so young, he spoke about a lot of principles that I've picked up from you over the last 2 years, and I was really just kind of surprised that he was that mature and that focused. And he talking about his friends and his family and his faith. I actually got to him through his coach who said I'm going to see him at church, and I'll call you after church. So, what are your thoughts on what you saw there?
Well, everything starts with you realizing that there's someone above you and above everybody else, and that's Jesus Christ. That's got to be everybody's foundation if you really want to be successful, because it's about others. So he's definitely coming from a grounded family. He realized that he can accomplish a lot of things. And now with sports is a business now. If you can afford to give the young men and young women the type of training that they need to be successful, they all have an opportunity to provide for their families in the future.
Sapphire?
At the top of my mind right now is like watching him, like Brian Westbrook came to my mind, even like a Barry Sanders, right? So everything that Coach Stump just said, and then that young man looks like he is going to be a phenomenal running back. And he's sacrificing himself for our country. A plus.
Well done, Grady Kinsey. We love you, kid. We'll be following you. I want to give you guys some closing thoughts coming to the next game. Sapphire, what do you expect for the play calling from Tommy Reese? I think he's an ex Notre Dame guy. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I saw he was at Notre Dame for a couple of years. I mean, I have no baseline for him in the NFL. So I'm going to be watching like everyone else to see what this looks like, the play calling looks like under his purview. I just want the Browns to win. And I just want the best for this organization that I've been rooting for decades. So those are my thoughts.
Coast up.
Well, I think they're going to have an opportunity. The Browns got some good news. I mean, not just about the Jets players that they've lost, but by them getting Cedric Tillman coming back, that's
Mhm.
going to be big for whoever is quarterbacking. Cedric he's had some success when he's been able to be on the field, and now hopefully the receivers will hold on to more passes than they did when Joe was there. You know, they've dropped some balls that have hindered that offense a little bit. So hopefully they'll get an opportunity to make some things happen. I mean, those guys that were there that I know were quality young
Mhm.
men as players. You know, I come from this thing from two from two aspects. First and foremost, from being a player, know that you're busting your butt and everybody's trying to do their job, and also from a coach. You know, knowing that the players have to respect you, and they talk in that locker room. They see the things that you do. When they've lost respect for you, it doesn't matter what you say.
Mm.
They just don't believe. And right now, with the things that Andrew Barry and Kevin has done, I just whether the players will say they lost respect for him or not because they're making so much money. I can tell you they've lost respect for those two guys.
Well, I'll say this in that division. Do want to get your last thoughts, Sapphire and Coach Stump. Truth be told, that division is still for the taking, which is crazy this late in the season. A little more than halfway. We're not almost halfway. The Ravens are going to make a push. You know, I think Aaron Rodgers and whatever's going to happen there, he looks a little washed. But, you know, Sapphire, what do you think in AFC North?
I mean,
What's
right
going
now,
to end up happening? Who's going to come out and win that division?
in this moment, believe it or not, I think the Ravens, because their defense is really tuned up in the last few weeks. Um, I'm looking at the Ravens to figure out how to eke out the first position in the AFC North.
Coach Stump?
Uh, I just expect other things from DK Metcalf. Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. He's throwing the ball pretty good. You still got TJ and the guys there on defense. I just think I think Pittsburgh's going to find a way to win that division.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank our guy Russ, our producer, for his graphics and his hard work and letting us have a great platform. Coach Stump, Sapphire, go Browns.
Go Browns.
Go Browns.